Hello and welcome to a special on the road edition of Erickson Live. So, welcome to my hotel room. We're getting very familiar, very intimate today. I am at the East African HR Symposium. You can see me wearing the lanyard right now. This is being organized by Erickson's Kenyan business partner, Rise and Learn. And so I'm having a great time connecting with HR professionals from all over East Africa here. And tomorrow I have a slot where I get to talk a little bit about how coaching can help in HR and how we can create a coaching culture and why it is important to invest in the engagement of our employees. Well, but for today, we have an amazing guest with us and an amazing topic. Before I get to introduce her, let me quickly tell you about when the next experience coach training online is taking place. Because obviously, if you like what you see here, if you like the type of discussions that we have, and you wish that you had a bit more of a background information of what coaching is all about, experience coach training is the avenue to explore. And the let me just put it on. And let me at the same time also have my microphone open. Just there, now you can hear me. So the next free webinar takes place on the 13th of October 2021 at 3 p.m. Pacific time. And the one after that takes place on 28th October at 6 p.m. That, if you are living in Indonesia, like our esteemed guest, that might not quite work out for you, but there will be, it's on a rotating schedule, so there will come a month or a week when it is convenient to you. And we have lots and lots of courses that are all around the clock, basically. All right, so with that out of the way, let me move to introduce our guest for today. And our guest is Lyra Puspa. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm very, very mindful. So Lyra is the president of Vanaya and Company, a group of companies that focuses on organizational development and transformation. As the regional partner of Erickson Coaching International for Southeast Asia, she's the first provider of an accredited coach training program in Indonesia and has built Vanaya Indonesia, a subsidiary of the company group, as a leading coaching school across the region. She holds double professional credentials, which are the PCC, the Professional Certified Coach from the International Coach Federation, as well as the EIA Senior Practitioner from EMCC, that's the European Mentoring and Coaching Council. She's also the founder of Coach Nija, the largest coach community in Indonesia. And through Coach Nija, she orchestrates a series of massive coaching movements every year across the country and held the largest global coaching conference in Indonesia called the World Game Conference, attended by participants from many more than 20 countries. And for such endeavor, she received the Best Global World Game Player Award from Erickson Coaching International, not just in 2016, but also in 2019, which is when I met her for the first time. And she's also at the forefront of applied neuroscience in business and organization in the world. And as a strategic, brain-focused coach, she has coached hundreds of corporate CEOs, top executives, as well as commissioners with extensive experience of more than 20,000 coaching hours. And as somebody still counting every hour, that is a massive, massive achievement. As a long life learner, she's finishing her PhD in Applied Neuroscience of Business and Organization at Canterbury Christ Church University in the UK, and she's simultaneously taken an executive postgraduate program at MIT Sloan School of Management. As her contribution to the global coaching community, she currently serves as the Vice President of Membership at the European Mentors and Coaching Council in the Asia Pacific region. Lyra, it is such a pleasure to welcome you. Welcome.
Thank you, Fabian. It's a really a pleasure and also an honor to be here to be with you, with all the coaches tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And everybody, this is a treat. Normally, you have to pay a lot of money to see Lyra speak at one of the conferences, where she's often and very readily booked. So we're getting something special today. All right. So, as always, if you are joining us live or if you're watching the recording, let us know where you're joining us from. Today, I'm looking forward to maybe seeing a couple more faces from our Eastern friends, since usually we are on a bit later. And I'm very excited that we get to, yeah, talk to you and get to talk to a set of different people today as well that we usually don't, yeah, serve as well. So, um, Lyra, I love to ask this question in the beginning
Mm.
because it goes right to the top of the logical levels. And that question is, how do you impact other people's lives for the better?
Yeah, that's actually a long life questions to ponder upon and then to reflect and to revisit again and again. So it's very, very important as of your questions. It's very important to me as well. So um, to answer that is, I think it's quite a journey. Okay, so first, I'm from the corporate background. I was a corporate executive, and then
Hmm.
turns to change my career to be an entrepreneur, and then I start like some kind of movement to empower other entrepreneurs to to scale up. Uh, at that time, I thought my impact of life, my impact to others is how to help other entrepreneurs to scale up their business at that time. So in order to, to follow that path, I conduct this like business mentoring, business consulting for them, and then it turns out that it is not about the technical, it is not about the business skills or perspective. What actually differentiates between those who are rising up very fast and those who are stuck in their level of business at that time is actually the mindset and then the mentality. And that's when I decided to find the new tools and weapons, and that actually i I found coachings. So I learned coachings in order to fulfill that purpose, but eventually I also evolved with coaching. So I had a coach, and then she coached me to answer such a big question at a time. Should I be really entrepreneurs with this all the quantitative aspect, which is I'm not really passionate to, or I really want to follow my passions in terms of people, because I found that when I actually met coaching, I realized that my true passion is not in the business, not on the sales of numbers, not even on the entrepreneurship itself, but on the people, to make other people's life better. Then I decided to pursue coachings, and then I met Lawrence, I met Marilyn's, and then we have this um, partnerships and to bring Erickson to Indonesia and then to Southeast Asia. Then after I focus on coaching and I go back to the corporate world, I do mostly corporate coachings for executives. Then I realized when we actually want to develop and transform organizations, we have to start from developing and transforming the people, the leaders, and the talents within that organizations. But then what makes it different? What happened actually in coachings? When I do coachings or when I trained people to learn to coach, I'm just curious what really happened in that in their head and their body, and whatever in their minds. What really happens there? So people got this awareness and they so transform significantly. Then I just realized, okay, so what actually changes inside the people, inside the persons, is actually how the brain works. Then I follow that, go back to, I follow through that to learn neuroscience at the and then now I realize that I even love research, especially scientific research, more than I love, um, directly involving in empowering people, through coaching. I love research much more. So and there's a lot of findings there, evidence, scientific, the knowledge there, the evidence there that is not yet known by people, by the world, by the industry, by the organizations. So now currently, I'm still open for another evolving period of my life. Now that what is actually the impact of me as a person is, and also in the organization of Anaya, is actually like bridging, uh, becoming the bridge between the science and the organizations, through coaching.
Becoming the bridge between science and organizations through coaching. That sounds like a really powerful purpose, and one that, yeah, I don't think we have that much of. I think the role that you're playing is really vital because it is, like you were saying, it is still an undiscovered country. It is still where we had a lot of white spots on the map, isn't it?
Exactly. There's a lot of research on psychology, but doesn't really relate. But there are many parts of that also already relates to organizations. But there's huge findings and evidence in neuroscience and a lot of explorations in the brain and the science, but don't really relate with organization or applied implementation. So yeah, so that's why in 2007 I decided to develop my own lab. Vinaya Neuro Lab is a one separate unit in the Vinaya group of companies. Yeah. So we have a lab now to do our own experiments and research in neuroscience and organizations.
That's gotta be exciting to have your own toys, if you allow that term, to play around with
Yeah,
and to discover things.
yeah, because life is all about creating your own playground, right?
Yeah, yeah. At least I hope it is for most people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can already tell you that this is going to be one of the most watched Ericsson Live episodes ever, judging by the
Mhm.
numbers that we have right now. So everybody, uh, you seem to be really, really interested in this topic and in Lyra. So help me make this the best interview and help this make this the best experience that it can be. So any questions that you have that you definitely want answered that you've been wondering about for years and years, maybe put them in the chat, and I'll do my best to get to them all, so that we can, yeah, give you what you came for, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Surprise me with your questions.
Yes. Oh, that
Yeah.
sounds like a challenge. Love your sense of adventure. So, Lyra, coaching, as we know, coaching is something that is, yeah, en vogue. It is very much in right now. A lot of people get an idea that coaching is something that could be helpful. But coaching still isn't a regulated profession, right? Anybody can call themselves a coach. It's not a protected type of title or anything like that. So as a result, there's a lot of half truths and misunderstandings and pop science where it's kind of like there is scientific findings that were true at some point and then have become simplified so much that they're not really true anymore. So, what might be some of those examples where you say, okay, right off the bat, I have to clarify this so that everybody understands this about neuroscience and about coaching?
Yeah. There's, yeah. You said actually exactly. There's some bunch of scientific evidence findings, and there's a lot of in the field and the market. There's a lot of scientific claims, and then becoming a scientific myth,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there are at least three myths actually about the brain, three or four myths about the brain that common people, I mean, like those who are not scientists, actually believe in, right? But it is not actually true. The first is like the dualism, the separations between the brain and the heart.
Hmm.
Like you think with your brain and you feel with your heart, right? That's very common. I also believe that previously
There's lots of
prior
songs
to
about
my
it. Yeah.
yes. That's very easy to digest that kind of terms, right? But actually, we think, we feel, we even decide, and we regulate our actions and behavior through our brain. So our brain is actually the organ that orchestrates all of that. So there is a circuits that specifically relates with certain emotions, for example. So of course we feel that emotions inside our heart, here in this part, right? But it is because there's a certain, nerves from the brain that relates with the hearts or your guts. There's certain nerves that relates with your guts. So you sense the you feel the sensations, the body sensation there, but it's actually regulated by our brain. For example, like that, something like that. Okay, so it's the same with passions. It's the same with motivations. It's always be regulated by our brains. Actually, that's the first. And then the second is.
And before we move on, why is that important? Why, when you thought about the answer, or when you kind of drew on your subconscious mind and everything that you know, and you heard my question, and this is what came up for you, why was it important for you to get that out there?
So, from my experience, and also from the research, when you got this, for example, like things like personality, and people think that it is something like traits that cannot be changed permanently, right? It is just innate since we were born, right? But when we got some kind of brain injury, for example, or a brain tumor, and then you got this surgery in certain part of the brain, it can change. It can changes your personality. It can changes the way you see the world, the way you perceive the things, the way you decide. And then there's a lot of case studies in neuroscience that it is the same person, but it is not. So changing the brain is not a simple terms. It can really impact a lot of our personality, our behaviors, our the way we think, the way we feel.
So what comes in for me? Sorry, if what comes up for me, if you allow me to share, is that if we bring that together with the concept of neuroplasticity, which we now start to understand more around, right, and which is saying exactly that the brain, we can form the brain depending on what we feed the brain, if you will. The brain will adapt and will learn. So in that sense, the way that we perceive the world and the way that we feel about things isn't, like you said, cast in stone, right? But we can, um, through exposing ourselves to certain stimuli, or through, through
It's not
learning,
only
change the way that we feel
psychologically.
about things. Would
Yes,
that be right?
it's not only psychologically, but it also physiologically. So that's
Right.
what I right. Yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
the very materia of the brain, like the very essence, the physiology of the brain can change depending on how the habits that we choose, etc.
Yeah, yes, and it is not only the anatomically, but also functionally. I mean, the region is probably the same, the circuit probably the same. That the way that circuit works, if we change that kind of we induce that kind of changes, it can just change a lot.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
one famous example, I think, is the London cab driver, right? They have to
Mm-hmm.
learn the whole map of London by heart and all the street names and everything. And when they analyzed cab drivers' brains in London, that
Mm-hmm.
region of the brain that is responsible for spatial location, everything was just more evolved than other people.
All something that really common for us is like building habit. Why certain behaviors just becomes casual behaviors, but it's not our habit. We still have to work hard, effortful to do it, and there are certain behaviors that just became naturally for us eventually becoming our habit.
Yeah.
Because becoming building habit is actually building a very strong rewiring network in our brain to develop myelins. So the brains works more efficiently in that certain pattern of behaviors, which we call habit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, efficiency is a big thing for the brain. Okay, thank you for bearing with me while I so rudely interrupted you. So, what's the second misconception that you want to get out of this
Yeah.
world?
Yeah, for example, like sometimes we learn from this pop science and to judge people, to stereotype people like left brainer and the right brainer, right? But the right brainer people are more creative but emotional, and the left brainer people are more logic but they don't kind of rigid, something like that, right? So it is true. It is true from the brain split cases. So when people have this, you know that there's a part of the brain called corpus callosum that connect between our left and right brain. When there is some kind of injuries or malfunctions in that part, and then our left and right brain cannot communicate in a good way. And then there's it is also true that our right brain have that some kind of specific functions, and our left brain has specific functions, but there is no such like a dominantly left or dominantly right brainer. There is no such things. When we when we experience emotions, it is actually it relates with the work of the either left and brain functions, depends on what emotions that you are experiencing, actually. For example, like that. Okay, if you create something and become creative, both the creative people and non-creative people. So for the they use both sides of the brain. So even for the creative people, for example, from one of the research, um, so like men and women actually use different part of the brain in terms of creative thinking.
Huh.
But both left and right brain, the women more into the men more into the frontal part, but the women more into the upper part of the brain. So, but both left and right, for example, like that. So, yeah.
Okay. And let me ask the same question. Why is that important? What becomes possible in our thinking when we clear up that misconception?
Don't judge and don't stereotype people into like boxing this type or that type, just for us to make us more easier to understand people. Just don't put people in some kind of like boxes. So you're a very right brain, so you're left brain, because that's not true. We use all the brains to think, to decide, to feel.
Well, easier said than done. Putting people in boxes or putting things in boxes, what our brain loves to do, right? Like seeing patterns everywhere, saving energy, having
Yes,
shortcuts. Yeah.
yes. Making patterns to make shortcuts, so to make it easier to understand is one thing, but to make judgment on people is another thing. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a very important
Mapping
one.
the pattern is actually what coaches do, right? Mapping the pattern of the thinking habit of our client or behavioral pattern of our clients is what coaches do. But we need to be neutral, not to judge them based on that, right? Because people can change.
Yes.
Right.
You might even say change is inevitable.
Right?
Yeah, sorry to Erickson nerds at work here. Um, yeah, okay. So you mentioned there were three or four. So what might be the next misconception about neuroscience or the brain that needs to go?
Yeah, okay, and there's the last one, right? There's several others, but the last one that we mostly encounters. Um, like, same, like putting people to several box, but not in terms of not in terms of left or right brain, but there's some kind of belief that people have certain learning style. You're I'm more visual, you are more auditorial, other people more kinesthetic. Okay, so actually, no scientific research that has that can prove that's actually true. There's no significant evidence about those belief. That's what we believe. But we use our visual, auditory, sensory, everything that we have, not only to learn, but also to capture informations. It's our sensory system, right? To capture informations and to combine that in a way that we can pop up with ideas to perceive the world. So yeah. So it's not like I'm visual, no, but okay, I'm thinking in a more visual way than words, but we still have this internal speech inside us, right? That's what it is.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. And for this one, I'm going to give you a why of why why that is so important. So just yesterday in class, I was asked, well, but there are people that are just not visual. Like if I or I'm not visual. If I can't visualize in coaching. Like what if I do if somebody just cannot visualize? And I basically said what you said, but with much less conviction, because it's like, well, I don't think that's true that somebody just can't visualize, right? And I will clip this minute of you talking about it, and we'll play that in class so that I have your authority in order to say, here, there you go.
Okay. So just do some experiments, right? Like, okay, you see me right now. Now close your eyes. Can you still imagine my face?
Mm-hmm.
So you can visualize.
Yeah.
As easy like that. We have that. We just choose to believe another way. But we have that in us, actually.
Right. Yeah, we choose to believe it, and maybe we're just not trained in it, right? Like maybe it's not our habit to visualize because we never have to at work, we're never asked to.
I agree with that, the habit words. Yeah, I agree. We can do it. We're not just used to use it more often.
Yeah.
Because we have all this daydreaming. We have this sometimes we think about it, and we have this stream of thoughts, right? Right. And some of them are visuals, some of them are words, some of them are sounds, some of them are just abstract, very abstract, right? So we just don't really train ourselves to do that.
Yeah.
And to make it more often, and actually when we say that coaching is about unlocking potentials, that's actually the one of the potentials that we should unlock. It means like you have that, but are you using that in a way that can really help you to achieve your goals or to become a better person?
Yeah, I do tell our students often that our coach or our role as the coach is not necessarily to make the client always feel comfortable, right? Sometimes it's a little bit of pushing and prodding and needling, like, hey, how about you visualize this? And I liken it a little bit to giving vegetables to my 18-month-old son. I'm going to put them on the plate, and sometimes he pushes them away and says, no way, I'm eating that. And then I patiently put them back again, and the next day I put the vegetables again, and sometimes he eats them. Yeah, and he gets more used to it. And the same as the way that I do it with my clients, I put the vegetables there. I say, let's visualize. What if you could see this or that? And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. But that doesn't mean that I stop proposing it and offering it in the hopes that they will pick up the habit at some point.
Yeah. And actually, why the question is why our brain creates habit, right? Actually, there is some part and system in the brain that shift certain behaviors or certain patterns of thinking or something into habitual patterns, right? So it's why actually the purpose of the brain to have this kind of system in us is just to help us to become more efficient. So our conscious, we call it conscious mind. So our conscious mind can focus to other things instead of like thinking consciously how to eat, how to walk, what to say, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So basically, when people say, "Okay, I cannot visualize," usually first they're not being trained enough or use it more often. But second, it is actually about coming out from your comfort zone, Do you want to stretch yourself further? To use the potentials, things that you actually have inside you that you rarely use. Right?
Yeah. Good. I'm glad that you give me the seal of approval here in a way. So we have one question from the audience, and everybody, I'm still waiting on more questions. This again is such a great opportunity. Make use of it. What might be the one question? If you could ask anything that you want to ask, Lyra, if you could just understand one thing about the brain that you don't understand yet, what would that be? Put it down in the chat. So Thierry is asking, what would be the easiest experiment we could do to experience the link between neuroscience and coaching?
Okay. One of these easiest things is actually from breathing. Okay. So there's a lot of research and probably a lot of common practice about mindfulness. Okay, and breathing is it often associated with training how to breathe. Okay, so for example, this experience is about intensive emotions, anger or sadness or fear or something. Okay, when we are when our brain is hijacked to certain emotions, deep and in very intense, what we call so-called negative emotions, is actually our brain prepared the whole body to the fight and flight mode, right? The defense mode. Okay, so we use a certain way as not so unconsciously, automatically, our body use a certain patterns of nervous systems. We call it like sympathetic nervous systems. So we kind of feel tensed, right? Then just experience. Just take a deep breath. Take longer breath, longer exhale than inhale. Don't do the opposite way. So longer exhale than inhale. Just do several breaths, 5, 6 times. Okay. Do it several times, and then just feel it in the body. Your body is shifted from tensed to more relaxed, right? And even your intensity of emotions is decreasing step by step. Why? Because through conscious breathing, or we can call it mindful breathing, in certain way, okay, it's sort of like that, longer exhale than inhale, and in a very, very calm way, is actually make our brain to shift the system from the defense mode to the, I call it growth mode, from the sympathetic nervous system to parasympathetic nervous system, which actually by research, it relates with our capacity to rest and relax, but also is actually our system to learn and to create, to be creative, to innovate, make intelligent decisions. So simple experiment that you can do with your clients, with your.
So that reminds me of kind of an experiment to look in the mirror when I feel bad and smile at myself for about a minute and waiting to see what happens.
Yes.
And yeah, it's actually amazing how often we think we have to earn a certain state of being when we can kind of decide to step into it, no? And then start from there, start from that relaxation rather than say, okay, I have to do this, and then I can be relaxed. Is that a fair kind of consequence of what you're saying?
Yeah. So there's like some kind of feedback loop. We change what we think, and then we see differently. We feel differently, right? Or we change some kind of the muscular, muscles in our brain, like smile, okay, or postures, and then it changes the brain, and it changes the way we feel and the way we think. So it's vice versa. It's always like that. it is called feedback loop.
Right. Yeah.
Either inside out or outside in. You decide.
Yeah, and that awareness that even is a possibility that I can decide, that I think is quite mind-blowing for a lot of cases. Yeah. So yeah. So Rosa is setting you up here for something that I definitely wanted to talk about. She says, "Hi Lyra, thanks for sharing your wisdom with us. Can you share an experiment that has shown the link of coaching and changes in the brain? It would be great to have some examples." Well, who better to talk to than you?
Yeah. I when I first involved in this journey of neuroscientific research, I also thought how actually coaching changed the brain. But actually, what I found, sometimes you doesn't have to change your brain. You just have to activate or alter or stimulate the brain in several seconds or milliseconds. And that moment, that millisecond activation changes us, even though our brain doesn't really change, So it's not only changing the brain, but also activating the brain in certain way. So, for example, like this. Okay. I will share some of our research. I haven't actually find the time to write the academic paper. I'm planning to do that next year.
Ooh, we're getting a scoop. Yes.
One of the research that we do is actually in the area of health coaching. When we coach diabetic patients, chronic diabetic patients, there are two studies actually. First 6 months, and then the second is 3 months. And then in the second research, in the first research, we found that after coaching, the diabetic marker drops significantly compared to the control group. The patients who are not being coached, even though they have the same doctors, the same medical treatment, the same training about diabetes, right? And then we did the second research, and then we involved neurotechnology. So we measure the brain before and after 3 months coaching. What actually relates with that kind of level of glucose, right, or diabetic marker? Because the hypothesis is when we coach a person and then they change their behavior, and because they change their behavior and lifestyle, because it is diabetic type 2, so diabetic that is related with a lifestyle, and when they change the lifestyle, so their diabetic or glucose level will be normal, right, or better, okay? But in our research, it is found that the diet, the sport, physical activities doesn't really change that much. So the behavior of the behavior that we thought relates with the diabetic marker doesn't really change that much. But the patients that are being coached drop their glucose level significantly, and also in a more sustained way than the control group. So what happened actually in their brain, right? Because the difference is only coaching, okay? And then they don't really change their behaviors. They don't really change their lifestyles, right? The calorie intake is more or less the same, okay? So what happened? And then we engaged in second studies. We use EEG to measure pre and post brain changes. And what really amazed us is that there's significant change in two associated construct or variables. First is emotions, and the second is the frontal part of the brain. Okay, so The first is emotions. What is really changed is actually the intensity as well as the frequency of two emotions, sadness and anger, not other emotions, not fear, not even joy. Are they becoming more joyful? No, but their sadness decrease, their anger decrease, and that actually it is translated into the brain, their brain activations. So the trace of this shift of emotions is also aligned with the change in the frontal part of the brain, how they work. Okay, so it is very interesting to find out that the anger circuits is less activated for those who were coached. The sadness is less activated. Okay, and then it's just completely opposite with the control group, the diabetic patients who were not being coached, who didn't receive coaching. Their anger circuits are much more active than 3 months, and then sadness keep the same, and then their intensity in terms of anger and sadness increase in terms of self-reported, emotions. Sometimes something that really have to think about, right? So yeah, so I really want to explore more whether certain emotions relate with certain chronic, a disease or something, right?
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. So my confirmation bias, of course, kicks in here and says, "Aha, yes, I knew it." In the sense that if we are slaves to our emotions, that leads to us not being really in control, and it leads to us not having the best life we could have. Whereas if we take a step back and we have ourselves be coached and we ask questions, we step outside of ourselves, we kind of look at ourselves, that sort of thing, that helps, put in a circuit breaker, calm things down, and that ultimately, uh, again, has physiological implications, right? That because if we have less intensity of like so angry, then yeah, it's like releasing the handbrake when you're driving your car. It's like there's just not so much friction.
Yeah.
Sorry,
And then in
my
run,
totally
it's all
unscientific interpretation of what you just said.
yeah. And then actually I'm still analyzing the data. We do it not for diabetic patients, the same techniques or tools and coaching tools to leaders to find what is exactly that relates with that kind of the other parameters, perspective about life. Again, we have that kind of parameters, and then it turns out that in certain in this study, it turns out that even we don't have to wait until our brain changed after several sessions of coaching. Even from one sessions, and even our brain hasn't really changed significantly post coaching, okay, but there's a certain moment, even that's only several seconds, not even minutes, several seconds, in that moment when you induce certain activations in the brains of our clients, it can really change the way they see the life. Second moments. And it is actually not realized by the coach itself. So you cannot you cannot detect that from what they say.
Right, because they're not aware of it yet.
Because yeah, they're not even aware of it. But that moment actually that relates significantly with how they see themselves, how they see the life.
That I find is so motivating for me as a coach, knowing that I just one question that I ask could potentially help somebody find new insights and it doesn't mean that I have to ask like perfect questions 10 times in a row. It means I can throw some things at the wall and I can ask certain questions, and if there's anything in there that really works because of some magic of the moment, then that might already be enough. And whether, I feel like I've done a good job or the client feels that I've done a good job, we can't even be the judges of that because something might have been in there, right? And it's such a kind of it inspires trust in me in a way, just inspiring trust in the coaching, in the process, in trying things out and being adventurous, like we were saying earlier, to explore and just see. And this idea that it just takes several seconds, that we don't have to train the brain like a muscle for months and months and months, but that just finding certain perspectives or certain areas, if that just gets a little bit more attention, then massive improvements can already happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. Wow, you're making my day today. That is wonderful, wonderful information.
Yes, I'm glad to share.
Yeah. So we have another
Okay.
yeah, so we have another question from the audience. And it's coming from a psychologist. So Gabriela, I know, is psychologist by trade. Um, she said, "Hello everyone. My question for Lyra is how suitable is coaching for people with special mental needs? So for example, like autism or ADHD."
Yeah.
And maybe supplementing that with what Miroslav said, he said there is such a thing as aphantasia, and I'm guessing that was in the context of people who really like medically cannot visualize and have no
Yeah.
capacity for that. Maybe we can bring that in there.
Yeah, it depends. That's why I really exploring this, and I call it actually this approach brain focused coachings. Because we tested, the techniques, the impact of coaching through neuropsychology, and I myself actually is still currently coaching leaders and their executives, but they're actually in the spectrum, even though they haven't been diagnosed. Okay, and there are many high functioning Aspergers, for example, they're still in the spectrum that can really, being the brightest star in the corporations. No, you know that. And for the autistic people, I haven't. I have for autistic or ADHD. Currently, I'm coaching an ADHD persons, but autistic I haven't make some observations or case study or research. But for Asperger or even for ADHD, coaching has actually helped them a lot. For example, one of the case with this executive, she's I'm grooming the client to become the next CEO of the company. Is for those who are in the spectrum, they have it is not easy for them to empathize with other people. It is just not their capacity. It is not because it doesn't. It is not because they don't want to. The physiology, their physiology, their brain functions doesn't. They just don't have the capacity to do that. But so if we coach them to feel other people, it will not be effective.
Right.
Because many of them are still have to be coached to connect with their own feeling. So it's a long way to do what people who are not in the spectrum can do it naturally. It's a long way, but they have this cognition, so we can start using or activating or utilizing their cognitive abilities to at least understand the patterns of other people's behavior. It's easier for them. So it depends. Yeah, so coaching can help, yes, but we cannot generalize these specific needs or special needs of people. So a different specific needs, have different approach. And I think from these small cases that I'm conducting right now, there's a lot of possibilities there. Even we do case studies, research for coaching for leaders that just recently have stroke. Okay, so they are very high performing leaders, and then they have the stroke, and then the company have the choice. will we still hire these people, or we just lay him off, right? Because they cannot function well. So from our experience and also our research from them, coaching to a certain extent, not really changing that to become a normal person, but to a certain extent, actually creates new path. I mean, like in stroke, there will be like an injury in the brain. We cannot coaching cannot you know growing the neurons in that particular part, but we coaching can actually like creating new circuits around that regions, okay, to take over the old patterns, and then doing some certain functions like visualizations with the future, or planning, or even talking, okay. And then one of the actually it is a real case. He is a medical doctor, um, and then he's one of the Erickson's students in Indonesia, and got stroke. And then one of the practice that he does actually very consistently and disciplined is first visiting again and reseed in module 3 and 4 every year.
Huh.
And then every time after finishing module 4, so it is actually it took 3 years for him to complete the and to pass the Erickson professional coach examinations, but he really consistent. And then every time he revisit or resit in the class, he becomes more influent in terms of talking. And now he's back in the practice, and then he coaches patients, and then he keeps doing coaching to his patients to improve, his communications and his thinking ability.
Wow. That is amazing. I knew that we learn best by teaching, but yeah, apparently, like, yeah, coaching doesn't only help the clients, it also helps the coach, right? So I feel much more energy at the end of the day after a long day of coaching than I did in the morning. Wow, so much to unpack there. So what I'm taking, for example, for example, with people with Asperger's, so it's not that coaching can suddenly transform and like heal them or something like that, right? But we can take them as whole the way they are, and we can help them make the most of the strengths that they do have. So they're not going to be able to feel other people's emotions, but they can observe the patterns, and that is the strength, the analytical that they have,
Yep.
right? That's what you were saying, that we just help them leverage the strengths that they have even better.
Yep. And then they can relate better to other people, right?
Yeah, right. So
Using their current strength.
yeah,
Yeah.
so different strategy for a similar goal.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
got it.
Yeah.
Wow. And the example with the stroke is just so impressive, honestly. And yeah, not repairing the part that has been damaged, but building stuff around it, finding a different way, finding a different path, seeing like what is it that I want, and rather than um, um, nah, um, being sad, I'm looking for a different word, but rather than grieving for what has been lost, finding
Yeah.
other ways to kind of get to a point where I can be happy. Yeah.
Be open with possibilities and do your research.
Hmm.
Learn. If you don't know how to do it, just learn. There's a lot of things out there. You can Google. You can learn that. Okay, so just learn
Yeah.
and be open for possibilities.
Yeah. Wow. So what time is it? Okay, so we have time for one more question roundabout. And Anissa is setting us up for a question that we wanted to discuss anyway. But Anissa is saying, so why is learning about neuroscience, why does that matter to us? And so I'm going to expand on it a little bit. Why, as coaches, or to what degree as coaches, do we need to know about neuroscience
Okay.
in order to be good coaches?
Yeah, interesting question. To be a good coach, you doesn't have to be a scientist. There's a lot of scientists that cannot coach and don't understand what coaching is all about. So that's part of the model to bridge that two worlds. But at least to change ourselves as a person, it means either you like it or not, either you realize it consciously or not, is actually related with changing our brains. Okay, at least changing the way brain works. Okay, so at least having a little bit deeper understanding about how the brain works is not being a scientist or becoming a scientist, but understanding a little bit deeper about how the brain actually works is actually not only can makes us have a better approach to our clients, but also to really understand us as a person. And then there's a lot of oceans, mountains of things inside us that we just don't know, and we take it for granted, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like our capacity to understand each other, our capacity to observe people, our capacity to make decisions and make choices. There's a lot of things that we just take it for granted, and it is if we understand the brain, how our brain works, then we can be more grateful about who we are as a person and what we have as a human being, as a creature. And from that, then we can also understand how we can be better every day.
Yeah, I love that. I love that intention to understand more in order to be more grateful. Just to know what a marvel it actually is that we're even alive and working the way that we do, and everything that is actually working, rather than focus on everything that's going wrong, basically. Yeah. Wow. Um, so Rosa is asking something that I also wanted to ask at the end here, as we're coming towards a landing. Um, Any tips on easy books or articles to understand neuroscience for laymen like most of us? I find this topic extremely interesting, she says.
Okay. Easy book. Okay.
But not too easy,
There's
not
a
so
book.
easy that it's wrong. So in the sweet spot.
Yeah. At least there's actually a neuroscience for dummies.
Oh,
That's one book, so you can understand that a little bit better. And then there is a book on neuroscience for coaches as well,
okay.
written by I think neuroscience for coaches, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Okay, the developing brain by Professor Jan Siegel. Okay, and then one thing is self comes to mind by Professor Antonio Damasio.
Okay, we'll put all of these in the chat. I'll look them up and I put links in the chat. Yeah, and then Thierry is also mentioning you may want to check the amazing work from John Kabat-Zinn. Very insightful and powerful. Never heard of the person, honestly, but we'll check that out. And then a classic that also comes to mind is The Master and His Emissary by Ian McGilchrist. That's not the most easily digestible, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, he specializes in brain splits. If you want to know about understanding about the left brain, yeah, that could be. But if you learn about the developing mind from Dan Siegel, then you can understand what is mind, what is brain, and how actually your brain relates with your mind. And if you learn about self comes into mind, and then you learn about the brain and the self, and how actually your brain creates the self. That's very interesting for coaches.
Yes. Yes, it is. Wow, Lyra, thank you so much for the gift of your presence and of your wisdom and your expertise that you've given us today. As we're wrapping up, what is one thing you really want to empathize? If people were just able to take one thing away from today, what should that be?
Yeah. from our experience and my research as well, if we have these potentials or talent, and then we have passions, follow your passion first, and your talent will, follow your passions, your talent. Your talent will be built, and because passions is actually relates with the values, and there's a part of our brain that that is or the system in a brain in the frontal prefrontal cortex that really what do you call it? It's the main functions relates with our capacity to evaluate things, to notice and to recognize and to process informations from values. Okay, and so just follow your passions and then be open to explorations about yourself. And if it comes to science, then do it. And if it comes to other things, then do it.
Yeah.
So I'm not a science. I was not from the science background. I'm from the corporate background. But then, just following the passions and let it flow and evolve, and let your purpose evolve. Actually, you it will be interesting. It will be interesting.
Yeah. So being open for that sense of exploration, being open to change, to explore, to evolve, to find an even better version of yourself.
Yes, just see life as an adventure. Okay, and put that in your practice. Put that in the way you live your life.
Yeah. I love how when we come from from analyzing and we have all these things and we synthesize and we come to the most profound insights, they sound so simple in the end again. And it's like just be open. That kind of then what it boils down to. I love it. Everybody, join me in thanking Lyra profusely for sharing herself with you, and a lot of people are doing that already. So if you enjoyed, if you got some value from this, share this with somebody who needs to hear this. Maybe tag somebody in the comments that needs to watch this, and help Lyra's work get out there. And Lyra, on that note, how can people get in touch with you, find out more about you? And I know you're a speaker, so what are you interested in speaking on? How can people book you for their conference, for example?
Okay. So first of all, I have LinkedIn, so you can always contact or connect with me through LinkedIn. And then there's a Vanaya website. We still trying to upgrade it to be more with a lot of more informations for other peoples about how the brain works there. I hope so you can also go there. And if you would like to invite me to share, to speak, it will be lovely about the how to apply neuroscience in the leaderships, in the organizations, or in coachings. Okay, to that's actually my specializations right now, business and organizational neuroscience. So be open.
Yeah, fascinating. All right. Thank you so much, Lyra. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Much love from Mombasa in Kenya. And please take care of yourselves and keep exploring, keep evolving, and have fun doing it.
And my regards, grateful regards from Jakarta, Indonesia.
There you
To
have it.
all over the review.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fabian. Thank you. That's very interesting.